Good morning, good afternoon and good evening wherever you are, and welcome to the latest episode of the My Coach Ben podcast. Firstly, thank you very much for stopping by. It's greatly appreciated as always, and I would like to extend a huge thanks to the new subscriber who joined us after last week's episode, and of course those that have followed on Instagram, Facebook, etc. So thank you very much for that. Hugely appreciated. And if this content does float your boat, then please do remember to like, subscribe, press the notification bell, and remember to tell your friends and family and colleagues, and we can continue to grow this community together. So thank you very much as always for the time and attention. In this episode we will focus on the next letter in the career growth A to Z. We've covered A, which was accountability, and B, which was for brand. And as we go on, I'm not going to recap, of course, every letter because that just wouldn't make sense. But now we will be on to the letter C. And the letter C, the word in this episode that we will attempt to unravel and to examine, is going to be the word clarity. And as usual, let's start with a definition. And if we go to the Oxford English Dictionary, we will see clarity as defined as a quality of being coherent and intelligible. Further on from that, there is another definition, the quality of being certain or definite. And that's the one we're going to focus on today. For example, it was clarity of purpose that he needed, having a clear vision of what you want. And this is, as I just said, what we're going to focus on in this episode. Let's begin with a couple of examples. What is clarity? Clarity is knowing where you're headed, and it's knowing where you're headed in such a manner that you can say, I'm completely clear in where I'm going, what I'm doing, and how I'm going to get there. Of course, we all know that things change in life, but when one has clarity, then it's easier to adapt to the inevitable and many changing circumstances that we come across. So I'll give you an example, which is something I often use as an analogy for life and career, and this is sailing. And now last year I learned to sail, which is interesting because a few years ago I couldn't even swim very well, to be honest, but you know, that's one milestone achieved, let's say. And then last year I decided, yes, I'll take a sailing course. And sailing is interesting because you know where you're going, or you should know where you're going, and that helps. And you're at the mercy of the wind, yeah, and also things like the daylight, the currents, etc. But we'll just take the wind for now. And if you want to sail in a certain direction, you need to make sure, well, you can't make sure that the wind is going in the direction that you want, but you need to be able to, follow the wind as far as you can. And in so doing, you need to change direction from time to time. And this is basically adapting to circumstances. But then also along the way, as in most plans in life, things will change. The direction of the wind may change, or it may get a little bit stronger. And then you have to actually be clear on how you're actually going to manage that. Yeah. If you're talking about, sailing, then you need to know how to manage the sails. Yeah. And if things get a bit too windy, if it gets too windy, if the sails get too full of wind, let's put it that way, then of course what do you need to do? You're going to let the sail out a little bit more, or you're going to pull it tighter and actually really kind of heel and let the boat really attack and go into the wind, or you're going to turn and steer into the wind a little bit. So these are all these little adjustments that you need to make. And of course, if you do things, let's say incorrectly, I don't like to use the word wrong, but incorrectly, then of course disaster can strike. Yeah, if the sails are overpowered with wind and you don't have ballast under the boat, then of course the boat is likely to capsize because it just can't handle that kind of force. So this is something which is very similar to life and career. Yeah, and you need to be clear in your career where you want to go. And it's something that I discussed with one of my mentees this week, which was about where one wants to go in the long term what the destination is. But then at the same time, there's also a lot of changing winds, a lot of changing currents, and a lot of changes going on in the workplace, and how is he going to deal with that? So this was something which was a very interesting conversation, and clarity is something that we need in order to navigate these changes that come about in life and career. And the task is something that we'll come on to shortly. So that I would describe as the what. So now we come on to the how. How does one achieve clarity? Well, there's a couple of people that I'd like to mention who are fairly close to me in terms of people that I follow what they do very closely. And these are two politicians. One is the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Right Honourable Mrs. Mottley, and the other one is the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Dr. Andrew Holness. Now, these two people lead very small countries, and they have to navigate being, let's say, small boats in a very large ocean, where there are lots of bigger ships, and everybody wants to jostle for position. And they need to be very clear, the two of them, in how they represent the country, and also how they want the country to be run internally as well as being seen externally as well. And I've always been very impressed by these two insofar as the levels of clarity that they have, the way that they think and support the countries that they represent. They both have a very high degree of clarity, and I'd urge you to go onto YouTube or whatever and have a look for a couple of interviews. One of them recently was Mia Mottley. I saw an interview from last year that she'd done with Trevor Noah, so this is an interesting one, and I'll put the link in the description below. So in terms of how one becomes clear, in addition to the two people that I've mentioned, it's important that you have a plan. And it's important that this plan focuses on your strengths, because your strengths will determine how you reach your destination. So strengths, as I would say, are kind of like your engine. These are the things which will drive you forward. It's one thing being driven, but as I often ask the question, driven by what? And these qualities, these values, if you like, are how one defines clarity. One method with my mentee as an example is we thought, well, let's make a list of these qualities, these values, the things that somebody is good at. There are always things that people are not so good at, weaknesses, if you like, but personally, I never want to focus on weaknesses. If you focus on weaknesses, then your strengths will somehow be neglected, and then you kind of become mediocre, let's put it that way. So you need to focus on strengths and understand what these strengths are and how they fit to the current situation and how they can align with where you want to go in future. And this is how we can become clear in what it is that we actually want to do, or how we actually need to achieve a certain outcome or a certain goal. And one of the things I've noticed over many years is that often clarity is this one ingredient which is missing. It's one thing where people often say, well, I'd like to do such and such a thing. Okay, well, how would you get there? Not really clear. And this is what we need to establish in order to set sail, if you like, in order to make sure that we're going to reach our destination. Because as I said before, if you don't know how you're going to get there, if you don't know which way the wind's blowing, then you're not really going to get very far. Or maybe you might do, but not where you want to go. So this is something which is very important. And those things that you need to look at, these are what I would call gaps, actually. And it brings me on to a coaching method which I came across with the Coaching Academy, and it's this is called the cigar model. And it's not one where you kind of sit back and do this. But the cigar model, as all of these things, is an acronym, and what it stands for is the current situation, the intended situation, the gaps, the actions that you need to employ or take, and the review, because you need to review these things. And the discussion I had in the week kind of fell into this model, let's say. So we looked at the current situation, we looked at what was intended, and we looked at the gaps. And the gaps can be filled by finding out these values, these missing ingredients that we need in order to get our engine going, in order to start moving. And once these gaps are filled, then you know what actions you need to take. And of course, these need to be reviewed from time to time in order to make sure that they're still relevant and consistent with the destination or the goal that you want to reach or achieve. So in summary, clarity. It is, as the definition, the quality of being certain and definite in what one wants to achieve or where one wants to go, or in certain facts as well. We can be clear that certain things are as they are. And this, as we use the sailing analogies, knowing which direction you want to go to and how you need to get there and what happens when things change, because things will inevitably change. And in terms of how, the how is about identifying the values or the elements of one's character which can help us get from one place to another, be it short, medium or long term. We need to establish what is missing and what we need to do in order to put those missing parts into place and to get moving and to complete the picture that we want to paint, or the direction that we want to go into. So this is how I would summarize clarity. I'll be more than interested in hearing what your thoughts are on that. If there are some elements of clarity that you feel you miss, or that you feel that I've missed, or some ways that it could have been maybe expressed, or some points that could have been included, then I'm more than happy to hear these. And by all means, leave a comment down below, drop me an email or what have you. There are various ways to contact me in this day and age, so please do utilize them, whichever one is suitable for you. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up there. I think this is fairly succinct, I would say, a summary of clarity and what it is and the things that we need to do in order to achieve clarity in our endeavours. On that note, I will thank you very much for your time and attention. And if you haven't as yet, please do subscribe, press the like button, of course, and the notification bell so you know when the next episode is going to be available. Remember to spread the word. A lot of people that I've come across have heard of this podcast, maybe, well, in the main through somebody else. I think people do a better job than the YouTube algorithm, if the truth be told. Take care of yourselves and one another, and I bid you a good week ahead. And until then, the next time, peace. Your Coach Ben. And the Oxford English Dictionary, actually, where is that? Oxford English Dictionary. In terms of what